Okay, folks. Oh, yeah, I really should adjust the text image because it's still saying 192. You'd think I'd think ahead with these sort of things, but oh well. Yeah, pretty much. Hey, Sean.
Oh.
Right, let's go in and get the future funk going. Let's see. Come on, where's my go-to? Where's my go-to? No, not that one. That's the one. Yeah, we don't need to hear a commercial for back market. Okay, not that loud. Okay, folks, welcome to episode 193 of SKL. Hard to think it's been 5 years doing this.
Oh, how time
5 years too long.
Thanks. Gonna get started off with a topic of another anniversary, and I'm sure it's one Win would have wanted to be here for, but you know, sometimes circumstances where you're not able to have full control of what's going on in the house, you get how it is.
Mm-hmm.
Dan says, "Hey MJ, are you winning?" Okay.
Oh God.
I'm not even gonna ask.
Is that a wrestling reference?
I don't know.
Not really. It's just like bad puns. Like it receives a punishment.
Ah.
Yeah, if this was Oni's stream, you'd be paying bits.
Next year, Sonic Sat AM turns 30.
Ooh.
Whoa.
Good lord.
1993,
Wow.
a simpler time. The year of Jurassic Park, Sonic 3 was in the works, and the Hedgehog had 2 animated series running at the same time. The Adventures of was a much more comedic slapstick foray into the Hedgehog's life, whereas Satam had a much more mature and dystopian feel that had the elements of Blade Runner, Mad Max, and maybe a little bit of Terminator mixed in it with it as well. Hopefully around T1 and T2. We don't tend to acknowledge anything post T2, except for Sarah Connor Chronicles. That shit's bossing. Yep. Sonic is the de facto leader of the Freedom Fighters that have been trying to take back control of Mobius ever since Dr. Julian Robotnik, yes, that is a thing, he is Julian, not Ivo, voiced by Jim Cummings, overthrew the Royal Acorn family in the coup d'etat when Sonic and Princess Sally were only 5. What I like that this series did well is that it was able to have a good balance of mature themes in dealing with consequences to actions, loss, and you have to fight for what you truly love and believe in. Sonic in this is a much more of a cocky, arrogant teen character than what we had seen him before in Adventures of, where he still has a slight immature personality but knew when to get serious as he was essentially Tails' guardian. In this, he reacts before thinking and he just lives on his impulses. So basically a teenage anthropomorphic version of either Homer Simpson or Peter Griffin. Hey Sally, chili dogs. And then,
Oh God, no.
and there's Liz going to therapy.
Are you proud of yourself, MJ?
No more than usual. Which, as you can imagine, frustrates Sally Acorn to no end. And let's be real for a moment. As time has gone on, more fans tend to watch the show for Sally's leadership and for being a flawed character and trying to remain calm and all together when all she really wants to do is find a space to crawl into and let her hair down and just be a teenager, instead of having to organize missions to overthrow the enemy of the royal family that exiled her from her rightful home. The late Ben Hurst had ideas of what would have been put into motion had the 3rd season gone into effect that would have seen the ascension of Tails into a similar role that he's occupied in the games in being Sonic's partner out in the field. And with the advent of Season 3 from the fans united for Satam, we may just get to see these put into motion with a fan-funded series, which the theme song was actually sung by Crush 40, with the fans allowed to have closure. After 30 years, with the story picking up from the end of Doomsday, where Sonic, Sally, and the Freedom Fighters would deal with Snively's rise to power, after Uncle Julian 86'd out the door, with fan fave voice actress Laura Blue set to reprise her role as Sally Acorn, mimicking Kathy Soucet's pitch and cadence. There are some episodes where it's brought in purely for filler, and Firebird, if you're listening out there, I know you're going to hate me bring this up, but he hates the Odd Couple and Rebecca mini episodes, where it was essentially just brought in as a means to try and give some character development to characters like Rota and Antoine, which, by the way, Antoine portrayed as a sniveling, cowardly Frenchman. That wouldn't fly today. That's like, you can't do that. Can't do that. It was the 90s. You could get away with it. More innocent time, and it was, I wouldn't say socially acceptable, but nobody did much about it. Whereas now, you'd be slandered. No doubt Raiden would be looking like, I approve of this. Go ahead. I think what I like that it has, it's not being like Batman the Animated Series, but it has very similar principles, because there would be the tones that would reflect what the episode's going for, but it knows when to have some sense of levity, because if you have, say, a Sonic the Hedgehog series that has the tone akin to that of the Dark Knight, that's not Sonic. It's got to have some light-hearted moments just to ease the tension, and I felt like with writers like Ben Hurst, he knew exactly what he was doing, but he would get stepped on occasion by Mr. Penders. We all know what he thought about Sally's situation, considering one time he wanted her killed off, but the president of Sega at the time said, "No, you're reviving her. She's too important, to the franchise's awareness at this time." Whereas these days they just throw it to the wayside, it's like, "No, we don't want nothing to do with you. It's Son Amy all the way," and I'm like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." Yeah, I mean, it's not a series that was ever going to win any awards or things of that nature, but I always felt like it needed some form of recognition for what it was going for, because it was actually trying to not be the goofiness of Adventures of. And for people that love Adventures of, I get why they like it, but for those of us that like to have something where you feel like there's a long-going story arc going on, where you have the goofiness, but you have something more tangible and something you could take more seriously. Because this show was actually very popular with kids in their early teens, where they liked something that was just a little bit darker. And they would deal with loss in some episodes, particularly in the very first episode. A character that's only referred to as Cat. He's locked up, to be roboticized later, and then Sonic comes back to try to break him out, and he's gone. And it's like, oh. It's those sort of moments that it won't explicitly say it, but he's gone. And one of the things that Jaleel White would say in one of the extras that was released on DVD in 2007, because he was also in the sitcom, not Family Ties, it was the other one with the actor who played the police officer in the first two Die Hard. He was essentially John McClane's liaison. Yeah. Because Jaleel was being Urkel, he didn't get to voice with the rest of the cast, so he would actually get a lot of voice recording sessions with Ginny McSwain. Very, very good voice director. And he would get to try to have input on the character to maybe 5 to 6 different shots at one particular line. And Jaleel says something. I didn't really understand what he meant when he said it, but now I kind of do. It's like, when you hear Sonic, is he white? Is he African American? Is he this other ethnicity? And he goes, nah, he's just hero. And I'm like, I like that. He's for everyone. And that's always the thing. Go on.
I kind of find it funny that, Jaleel White voiced him, and now you have another black actor who now voices him in Sonic Frontiers and in the upcoming and another one in the upcoming Netflix show. So a part of me kind of likes that.
I mean, for me, Jaleel has always been the quintessential Sonic. The first time I ever heard his voice in Super Special Sonic Search and Smash Squad, it was like, yes, that is Sonic. Like when you hear Kevin Conroy's Batman, it's like, that's Bats. You hear Christopher Daniel Barnes as Spidey, it's like, yeah, that's Spidey. Go on.
Sorry to interrupt you. I was going to say, it makes you feel like it was such a lost opportunity to let Jaleel White do the voice of classic Sonic in Generations and Forces, rather than keeping him as a silent protagonist. On top of that, with the whole Sonic Prime show coming to Netflix, with the whole idea of Sonic going to different universes, you think that would have been a perfect opportunity for Sonic to visit a world based on adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog or Sonic SatAM, as opposed to the generic, oh, it's Sonic, but he's a pirate. It's Sonic's world, but they're cyborgs.
It's funny you mention that. There was a wild rumor. There was a wild rumor going back as far as 2010 when the idea of Generations was coming about where they would actually have classic Sonic. There was a rumor they wanted Jaleel to come in and, well, reprise his role, but not reprise his role, if you get what I mean. It's not reprising from any of the animated ones that he's done.
Oh, yeah,
but
yeah.
He would have been...
It's like when they got Kevin Conroy back to play Batman for Justice League Action. It's not the same Batman, but he's doing Batman again.
Yeah. It would have been interesting if we had gotten Jaleel for it, but for what it's worth, classic Sonic being mute, it kind of added a little bit more of personality to him, and that he could be just as expressive facially and physically as he would have been verbally. So,
but then why have classic Tails and classic Eggman talk?
No. And with classic Tails, that was basically, I think it was either Kate Higgins or Colleen O'Shaughnessy at the time. They had them purposely squeak their voices up a little bit more just so that classic Tails sounded younger than modern Tails. And like I say, with Season 3 coming round, they have not specified when it's going to be there, but it will be here within, 6 months to a year, and they're just putting the finishing touches on it. And it's like most things, when you see somebody, see a group of people put their heart and soul into it, you know they're going to give it their all. And like I say, the fact they even got Crush 40 to do the theme song. I mean, for one thing, they probably just got, necessary funds just to get Crush 40 to do that, because for them, a job's a job. But even, there's so many close ties between Sonic and that recording group, so be interesting to see what they do. And like I say, for a lot of people, this is 3 decades worth of closure that they've waited for, because the last ever episode ended on a cliffhanger, and people were thinking,
I think I remember that cliffhanger,
because a lot of people were speculating for so long who was the red lit eyed figure that was in the background that had Sonic's mono eye. And some people were speculating it was a clone of Sonic. Some people were speculating it was Knuckles. No, it was Naugus, which Hearst actually revealed in an interview on the same DVD release. But then I thought, well, why does he have Sonic's eyes? That's just a bit that just didn't quite, they couldn't quite connect the dots with. But the problem was, the series would actually suffer from a lot of, college sports games being put on instead of it, which messed up the runtime and the viewership, and it didn't help matters at the time that the Power Rangers had become white hot, because Power Rangers in 93 and 94 was everywhere.
Yep.
So Power Rangers weren't responsible for killing it, but they inadvertently had a helping hand in it, because more people were going out, watching adventures of the Power Rangers and the various Zords against Rita and Zed respectively, depending on what year you were watching. And
oh yeah, I mean, that was definitely the case for me, where I unfortunately never watched either Deke Sonic series, because they were just never on the channels that I would watch my Saturday morning programs. I pretty much grew up on Fox Kids and Kids WB, so of course I was one of those kids who grew up with Power Rangers. I even looked up right now what channel Sonic Sat AM was supposed to be on. I guess looks like it's ABC, which I never bothered with growing up until I think ABC's one Saturday morning cartoon block in the early 2000s. For me, unfortunately, I never grew up with either of these shows, and my first exposure to Sonic would be the combination of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, Sonic Heroes, and Sonic X. So, the adventure era, that ended up becoming my own first exposure to Sonic at the time. I can only imagine, it also happened to be the case where it's my parents didn't introduce me to video games until the Nintendo 64 and Game Boy Color were out. So everything during the Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis era, I had no exposure to. So yeah, it's for I guess for younger people who were born during the 90s, there is a chance that a lot of people like me were unfortunately missed out on the Sonic bandwagon, as other 90s properties were popping up around that time and were more readily available, as you mentioned, such as the case with Power Rangers.
Yep. As I say, particularly with Season 2, when they had the Doomsday Project arc, Ben Hurst wanted to have the arc of what felt like something larger, grander, and cinematic, and even with the filler episodes, you felt like you had to tune in each week just to see where this was going. And this was also when one of the very few times Pender's meddling actually worked, because in Sally's art style of Season 1, all she has is, on occasion you'd see her wristwatch on her, but also just her wearing her boots and Nicole essentially clamped onto said boot. Whereas in Season 2, because people had some complaints, it's why is this girl not wearing any clothes? It's she's got a fur coat. It's yeah, well, put clothes on her. And I'm okay, fine, whatever. That's when the iconic denim sleeveless jacket came in, and where they actually added more characteristics around her eyes, so that rather than just the what looked like just two plain blue dots in her eye, it actually resembled something similar to what Sonic has these days with the whole green eye effect. So Penders, you get a pass on that one, because I was okay with that. But he was also responsible for slimming Rotor down from being if we go by the premise that Sonic's supposed to be something like 4 feet, Rotor was probably standing at least 4'8", and then for whatever reason in season 2 he's squished down to Sonic size with smaller tusks, and I'm like, okay, whatever. And they changed the voice actor as well, which people actually liked the voice actor that they had in season 1, but you know, when people meddle, they meddle, and believe you me, he's done a lot of it. So much so that whenever he's supposed to be at conventions, IDW even had to sign up saying, do not serve this man. I'm like, wow, you're gonna go real deep with the shade there. But considering the shit he pulled, where he actually copyrighted most of his characters in the comic book, including most of Knuckles' family, because there was a huge interarching stories that were integral with the comic, and that's when Archie's kind of did a reboot where they just focused on the characters that they had the licenses to, and just focus something closer to the games. And that's also when a certain Mr. Flynn got involved.
Now, did you know, out of curiosity, since you brought up Ken Penders and earlier the fans' hope for a potential season 3, are you familiar with a little stunt that Ken Penders pulled off called Sonic Armageddon?
I am aware.
I'm aware of its existence.
I have heard about this. It's supposed to be where Mobius ends up getting destroyed, and they end up traveling through space, just going on more adventures, and that was supposed to be like a potential pitch to sell as a continuation of the series as a movie.
Right, but did you know how that project came about? Because it's pretty wild.
Oh.
Mr. Noir,
Okay.
You have my full attention.
All right, so I am going to be reading off the Sonic wiki here for Sonic Armageddon. So yeah, this was a canceled film that was originally conceptualized by Ken Penders around 2002-2003. However, prior to Sonic Armageddon, the late Ben Hurst, one of the writers for the Sonic the Hedgehog TV series, attempted to pitch a continuation of the show in 2002, either in the form of a third season or a movie. At this point, MGM had given the rights for Sonic the Hedgehog back to Sega after the canceled film Sonic the Hedgehog Wonders of the World was no longer a thing. And Sonic Wonders of the World, that's another crazy ass story with that canceled movie. But anyways, Ben Hurst consulted with Deke Entertainment about his plans, and Deke gave Hurst the name of a Sega executive who wanted to talk with him more about his idea. Hurst then got a call from Ken Penders, the then head writer of the Sonic comics published by Archie, who had been alerted about his interest in making a Sonic movie. Though Hurst offered Penders to include him in the effort and told him about his strategy, which involved developing a satisfying storyline to conclude the show while simultaneously giving Sega ideas for a new game, Penders scrapped his attempt by claiming to Sega that Hurst was trying to co-opt the franchise, which led to Sega dismissing Hurst and allowing Penders to then take over with his own pitch for a movie in September 2003. So basically, had Ken Penders not got involved whatsoever, we could have had a potential continuation from one of Sonic SatAM's lead writers. But the moment that he got Ken Penders involved, Ken ended up backstabbing him by saying, "Hey, Sega, this guy's trying to take ownership of Sonic away from you. Let me take over this project." And then once he got exactly that, he ended up making Sonic Armageddon, which ended up being like 4 pieces of concept art as well as a really shoddily made pitch video, which I'm sure I can look online for us to watch together. But yeah, pretty much after that, the project ended up falling apart, and Sonic X ended up being made in that time. Ken Penders would go on to state that the only reason the idea was dropped in 2007 was due to a quote-unquote massive corporate upheaval. Although, if you ask me, if you look at that pitch video, you can I can already imagine the people at Sega were like, "Nah, this ain't gonna fly, dog."
it doesn't surprise me. That does sound exactly like something Penders would do. I mean,
For sure.
he even tried making a pitch of having like a SatAM Origins movie, but have it akin to the tone of Lord of the Rings and the runtime of Lord of the Rings. Now, I'm a big Sonic fan. I don't know if I could watch a 3-hour movie. And also, animation, even in the 90s and 2000s, animation even then was not cheap. I mean, some argue CG's cheaper, but depends who you're making it with. You know, because if you shop around, you can get, you know, the same quality, but for a fraction of the cost and what have you. But I don't know. Raiden as the Jaleel White sound-alike of this group. Hey, always mean it as a compliment, man. Always mean it as a compliment. When were you first introduced to SatAM? What were your thoughts on it initially, and how do you think it holds up nearly 3 decades later?
Well, I can't hold you. Just like Kaiju, I never even knew anything about Sonic until the video games. And I had a couple friends
Which
that
one?
the Sega Genesis. What was that?
Which game?
Okay. Well, the first time I knew about Sonic was seeing the cover of Sonic and Knuckles.
Oh. That is an iconic cover.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Yeah, that's the image that I still hold to this day. I think it's very very cool looking. I don't think I had checked out SatAM until like I guess I was like 8 or 9, and I can't hold you. I watched bits and pieces, but the only thing I knew about Sonic related cartoon wise was the Adventures of Sonic. And I didn't know.
As usually most people's first introduction to most animated versions of him.
Basically, I mean, back then it was on Toon Disney at the time, so I was like, Sonic. Kind of heard about this character, and I kind of was hooked. I liked it. SatAM, I didn't check out until like until I was a teenager, and I was like, oh, this is more darker than I expected. But I was used to it because I watched Batman the Animated Series growing up. So, from what it's worth, I thought it was a good representation of what Sonic is. It's just a different telling instead of just the happy-go-lucky. It's dark, but the end is always hope. I've always checked out think pieces of it, especially the series that cliffhanger.
Yeah.
I honestly thought those eyes was Metal Sonic because I don't know why. Like I kind of like that character.
Yeah.
I think it holds up well, especially how dystopian future, blah blah blah. I mean, back then you had a lot of films and series that does that, like Mad Max, frickin' Escape from New York. So I think for me it holds up. For what it's worth, I thought it was really good, even though I'm not the biggest Sonic fan out there. Because gaming wise, I don't really mess with Sonic aside from Sonic Heroes and Sonic Adventure 2 Battle on GameCube. But cartoon wise, I liked it. I liked the two pieces of it, so I liked it.
Would you say, and not to compare SatAM with the Terminator Sarah Connor Chronicles, but would you say, like Sarah Connor, was it cancelled way too soon?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like it had more to give. You know, I felt like it had more episodes to tell. I mean, it's basically like every cartoon that starts out great, it gets better, then bam, it gets canceled. Yeah, it was definitely unjustly canceled.
I have noticed as time has gone on, I appreciated this incarnation of Sonic as a kid, but as I've grown more distinguished, there are times in some episodes I just want to backhand him. It's like, look, you're my boy, I love you, but stop. You're making a fool of yourself. Especially like sometimes you hear me like, let's glide. Clyde's like, please stop. It's like, please, for the love of the good Lord, please stop. I feel like, you know, I have more sympathy with Sally at times whenever he goes off on one. She's like, oh, brother's like, oh yeah, I know how that feels.
So what you're saying is that version of Sonic is basically a half toned down version of, and I hate to say it, Peter Venkman from Ghostbusters. It's more of the immaturity, not the, you know.
Yeah, the other questionable stuff that we don't want to acknowledge from that first movie. Is, you know, no angst towards Bill Murray, because at the end of the day, he's just doing what he's told to do. But seriously, stuff that character did in the first movie will not fly today. But yeah, I'd say immaturity-wise, it's a fair comparison. Then, like I say, I just had more, you know, found Sally's character more relatable because of all the shit she's going through. You know, having to grow up much more prematurely than any child should have to do, and she's having to be an adult and essentially a mother figure to Tails as well. And the character's supposed to be like, it varies between whom you ask, because in season 2 she categorically states she's 16, but in some continuities they've, you know, she's anywhere from 15 to 18, so it depends. But even then, to ask a character or even a real life person in mid-adolescence to essentially be as mature and responsible as, say, someone twice your age, that's a lot to ask of someone. And I feel like, particularly with Kaf Sosei's voice delivery, that's why that version, you know, so many people love that version of Sally. Then, of course, you get people that say, oh, Sonic should be with Amy, blah, blah, blah. It's like, let's be real a minute. Let's just say for the sake of discussion, all of us are a different incarnation of Sonic. You see Amy Rose coming out of the Yondere thing, the first thing you think of is either run or restraining orders.
Run away!
I'm hiding.
You imagine it. Kitsune-kun, we go to have dates. It'd be like, nope, get away from me. Get away from me. And there's Liz thinking, why are you sticking me with her? Although imagine Amy going after Oni. Actually, no. Oni has enough nightmare fuel after watching War Games last night.
Oh, man.
I did hear through some of the things I was listening to on the live stream. Oh boy, he was not having fun.
From what I've heard, yeah, from what I've heard, it didn't look good. From a story standpoint of the ending, I get it, but like, for me, you can't do a War Game fest without blood. That's just me.
Sean's just made actually a very good counterpoint. At least with the Boom incarnation of Amy, she actually has some self-control. That's what I like about what they did with Amy. They actually gave her flaws and actually rounded her out. I mean, yeah, there is still that that interest for Sonic, but it's toned way down in comparison to what we've seen from, say, Sonic X, the comics, and the games. Because even in Sonic Generation, you can see him putting his hand up saying, Amy, no, don't come near me. No, we're not doing this.
So some mild spoilers for Frontiers. She does have a bit more character growth in that game, so it's like, I'll give it that. There is some character development there.
Well...
Oh, that's good to hear.
Because here's the thing, and I've stated this for more time than I would care to mention. Amy the character is not the problem I have with her. It's the way she's written and the way she's depicted. Because, you know, when you compare Amy to Sally, it's night and day, apples to oranges. Two of them are completely different personalities. But it's just the way that Sally's got this slightly... I don't want to say completely maturity about her, because even she has her off moments where you sort of think, okay, Sal, you know, go take a chill pill. But because she's had to be a leader, and because she's had to adult way quicker than anyone should be expected to, you have more sympathy because of the fact that when she does have her slight off moments, it's like, hey, hang on, considering what she's dealing with most of the time, let her have that. You know, because she's essentially having to be the leader and a mother figure. And occasionally a mother figure to Sonic, because even there are times I'm like, Sal, please, for the love of the good Lord above, will you please backhand him? Again, it's just the way she's written. I think that, you know, and even Win would vouch for it, you know, that version of her is iconic. The version that goes and bitch slaps Sonic in front of everyone, that's, you know, that was just a poor writing decision, but, you know, we don't talk about that moment. It's just one of those, no, didn't happen. Lids, with regards to Sat AM, same questions like with Raiden. When did you first become aware of it, and what do you think of it today?
I'm gonna be 100% honest. I didn't grow up with it because, again, like Kaiju and Raiden, I wasn't exposed to it. So, and from what I saw later in life, it was decent. It's just I feel like I wasn't the demographic for it. If that makes any sense, I feel like
No, that's cool.
It was fine for what it was, and I will respect and support the people who love the show. It's just I kind of like needed to get into it to watch it. If that makes any sense.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry.
Completely agree with that. I completely agree with that.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I didn't like it. It's just I feel like I wasn't like age for that yet. Because again, I think at that point I was watching Power Rangers at that point, and
Who wasn't?
Like, I wasn't. Yeah, exactly. So it's like I was like not gonna about to switch channels because I wanted to freaking watch Sonic. I don't mind Sonic. It's just I'm not gonna change the channel for it. I'm a lazy child growing up in the 90s. I'm not changing the station. But again, it's like I don't disrespect the people who love that show, so it's like good on them. It's just it wasn't thing. Maybe if I get a better watch of it later, then that's fine. I don't know.
Did it ever get like a legit DVD release?
Sat AM, yeah, it did. In 2007, because it did get some initial singular releases in the early 2000s, but because DiC was under ownership by Disney at the time, they weren't notified about it, and the distributors had to cease further production of the DVDs and what have you until DiC were released by Sega and then bought up by Cookie Jar Entertainment, and then Cookie Jar got bought up by Shout Factory, and then like the license and agreement with Disney had long since gone by 2007, where they then able to finally release it as a box set. And mine was actually region free because I actually bought mine from Amazon.com instead of .co.uk, because for whatever reason, I think, and this is going to be showing a little bit of a trip back in time, even Play.com in the UK weren't listing Sat AM until like September, October of that year. And I'm like, well, I get mine for region free. I mean, yeah, I'll pay a little on import, but at the time it was like $18, which import at that time, that's chump change. So I was like, nope, I'll have that. And what was really nice pièce de résistance is that Shout Factory actually had a competition to the fans, and they said, if whoever sends in the best fan art, and we're talking like border level, professional looking designs. If we select your designs, they will not only go on the cover art, the outer sleeve box art of the DVD, but they'll also be put in on the inner sleeves. And some of the most talented artists really brought their A game, because there's some of the artwork that's on there. In fact, let me have a quick look just to see Sonic.
Because I did find that Discotech ended up releasing the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog on Blu-ray, and I'm wondering if that also had its own art competition, since I've never seen this artwork before that wonderfully emulates the style of the Sonic 2 box art, but with the designs of Adventures of.
I don't know if they did that specifically. In fact, I'll just... Oh, yeah.
Also, I'm looking at that complete series DVD series from 2007, like you mentioned. It's on Amazon for like $150.
Yeah.
Me.
Yeah, that's because they don't make it anymore. The image I'll highlight, what I'm highlighting here, front and back, that's all fan work. Whereas the one that some people look at, I think that's the one that was released in the UK. I mean, it's okay, but...
Oh, so this Shout Factory, this is the one that's out of print now?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know Shout Factory was around that long, back in 2007. Okay.
Well, they actually were the ones that actually released Thunderbirds on DVD in the States, and...
Yep.
Little side trivia. I think Shout Factory actually had to change some of the description, because it's the clip from The Perils of Lady Penelope where Scott is coming back from a vacation using Thunderbird 1, which I thought, wait, aren't they supposed to be used for rescue? Like, never mind. Can't get my head around that all day with that one. And it said Scott lands at the secret base, and I'm like, it's like Virgil lands at the secret base, and I'm like, Virgil pilots Thunderbird 2. This is Scott in Thunderbird 1. It's like, you know what, whatever. Clearly people that weren't doing the research, and they come back years later, it's like, okay, they've changed it. It's like, okay, you've actually listened. But, no, like I say, I saw...
Also, apparently... Yeah, go ahead.
Like I say, I saw the DVD series was advertised at the time, and I'm like, this is actually my chance to actually finally get this. And it's just like, I don't care if it's like import prices, like, this is mine. I've wanted this since, the show went off the air, and only having like X amount of VHSs of when it was taped, which, here's the thing, VHS degrades over time. DVD, I've yet to see DVD degrade to a point, whereas with VHS, they don't age so well.
Of course.
You were going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, I also found that both Sonic Boom and Sonic X were both recently released on Blu-ray. In the case of Sonic X, it's only the English dub, since there's like a lot of heavy editing that was involved during the English video.
Those edits, good lord.
Yeah, strangely, I guess, like, I've seen, what was it? I remember Discotech had put out Digimon, that's what it was. They put out a separate release for the English version and the Japanese version, which I found very interesting. But again, back in the day, I made plenty of edits, so it's not like you can simply switch the audio option like you can with modern anime. So yeah, there's a whole release for Digimon in English, and then there's a whole separate release for Digimon in Japanese. So I can only wonder if and when a Japanese dub release of Sonic X will ever come stateside. But it is strange that now there's Blu-ray releases for Boom, X, and Adventures, but not SAT-AM currently. There's no modern release that's really available.
I'll definitely be looking into that a little bit later. A Blu-ray release of Adventures of that will go very nicely.
Oh yeah, I sent the link down there in our chats.
Ooh, yes,
since you said you have a region free if you have a region free Blu-ray player, you're free to snatch this up.
All right, we'll definitely be taking a look at that. Just to get moving around the table again. So Stephen, same questions that I posed to Lids and the Cyber Raiden. When were you introduced to Sat AM? What did you make of it, and how do you think it holds up?
I remember it being one of the very few programs that Channel 4 would actually do in a kind of like the semi-kids block back in the day, because it was on the same channel where I ended up watching Biker Mice from Mars. For anyone who remembers that in the 90s.
I do. Voiced, and with Throttle being voiced by Raphael himself, Rob Paulson.
Mm-hmm. But there were only a few episodes I can actually remember watching of Sat AM. But probably one of the first experiences that I ended up getting introduced to the Hedgehog, seeing as I didn't have any access to any of the games until much, much, much later on.
All right.
Don't really think I have much to add other than that.
All right. Last and never least, Kaiju, same questions to you. How do you think it holds up after all this time, and when were you introduced to it?
So, I've mentioned before I never grew up with the Genesis era of Sonic media, as my introduction to Sonic was the Adventure era. And even when I eventually came to learn of the older Sonic games and Sonic cartoons, I would always be like, well, that's not my Sonic, that's a different Sonic. And so, I perhaps maybe came across Sonic, Sat AM, and Sonic Adventure probably through Wikipedia as I was learning more about the history of Sonic. I think it was around middle school, between 2004, 2006. I was already well into Sonic, having played Adventure DX Director's Cut, to Adventure 2 Battle, and especially Sonic Hero. I loved the hell out of Sonic Heroes. So, by the time I was in middle school, I ended up, Wikipedia was thankfully a thing, and I started learning about the history of it, and I just simply came across Adventures and Sat AM just through Wikipedia articles. I'm like, oh, okay. It's one thing to actually, see the show in clips, and it's another thing to just read it off a list of trivia notes. And YouTube was barely a thing at that time, so it's not like there were any clips really to watch of Sonic Sat AM outside of the whole the memes and YouTube poop section. But that's another thing entirely. It wasn't until I saw the Nostalgia Critics video covering both Adventures of and Sat AM that I really get to have a good feel for what these shows were. One being zany, wacky, Looney Tunes comedy, and the other being more grounded, serialized story. And I thought, oh, okay, wow, again, this is not my Sonic, because again, I was growing up on Sonic X at the time. But it's okay, these seem like really interesting, unique depictions of the characters in its universe. Still to this day, I've never watched the series, but I definitely respected both of them as shows that represented what the Hedgehog was at the time. And I find them to be very fascinating because, in retrospect, it's very interesting to see how, when Sega brought Sonic stateside, they pretty much allowed the American creators, the Western creators, to just do whatever they wanted with the franchise. There was no real Sonic Bible, Sonic Bible to base their stories off of. They pretty much allowed Archie to do their own thing, Fleetway to do their own thing, the Western manuals to do their own thing, and the cartoons, each cartoon, all three of them, including Underground, to each all do their own thing. And once we get to the Adventure era, at that point, Sega decided, okay, we're going to wipe the slate clean now everyone has to abide by the Japanese lore, meaning, no freedom fighters, no Sally Acorn, no musicians with no Manic and Sonya, no Fleetway Berserker Supersonic. We're just abiding by what came first, which is the Japanese stuff. So it's a thing that I've never seen before, where they just allowed so much freedom to go by and resulting in stuff that's just like so wildly different from each other. And yeah, like I said before, it's a thing I've almost never seen before, except maybe Godzilla, whenever like Marvel handled the character and Hanna-Barbera did their own thing and stuff like that. By the way, someone has their microphone like really loud.
I think that's Lids.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. Let me try to turn it down.
It sounded like you were
Sorry.
it sounded like you were breathing heavily into your mic.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. There we go. Is that better?
Oh yeah, that's a lot
much
better.
better.
Okay.
That's actually a very, that's actually a very
Basically my
good,
thoughts.
that's actually a very good introspective. Appreciate that, dude.
Of course, I always enjoy looking at the big picture and just seeing just how absurd it all really is when you really think about it. Like, you'd think it'd be the easiest thing for Sega to tell Deke and Archie and Fleetway, hey, this is the Sonic lore, stick to it. But no, they're like, hey, do whatever you want, do whatever you think will make Sonic sell. And
Yeah.
thus we ended up with the most fractured fandom ever, where you got people who's like, no, this is the definitive Sonic. No, this is the definitive Sonic.
Calling
And
it,
so now they.
calling it
sorry.
fracture doesn't even begin to crack the ice with that. Good lords.
Oh dear, no.
Oh dear. Yeah, but you're not wrong, saying that it's so divided and what have you. This is one of the reasons I'm not... Shut up, Watch. This is one of the reasons I'm not part of the official Sonic Facebook group, because the moment you mention Adventures of, or you bring up Sally Acorn, the hate mob comes after you, and
That's not the real Sonic.
and it's just like... yeah, can you send me up to Thunderbird 5 till all this blows over? Yeah. And especially Twitter with the way it is with the Sonic fandiverse. I mean, when you get people that have like whether it's Facebook, DeviantArt, or on Twitter, that there are specific hate communities for Sally. Now, I appreciate it's just a fictional character, but it's like, come on. I appreciate that, yeah, on occasion, vent, let it go, but when you dedicate your time just to hating a character that a lot of fans actually love and cherish, it's like, that's petty. But
Well, what do you expect? It's Twitter.
But you gotta remember, MJ, you gotta remember that these are just simple Sonic fans. These are people of the land, the common clay of the New West. Morons.
one of the very few things that I have ever agreed that Darkness the Curse has ever said is just a few simple words. Dude, it's the internet. And I'm like, yeah, I can't argue that point.
Anything can happen in the next half hour.
Or in this case, the next 12 minutes. It's review time.
Oh boy.
Ooh.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that reminds me, I need to punch that in, because again, we don't know how Twitch is with streaming reviews, so... And Sean said, what if you say Sonic? Let's not go down that road again, dude.
Please no.
Got to go fast.
I'm at 0.
Go get him, Sonichu.
But no, we don't talk about that
no,
either.
Dude, no, why?
Could have been worse, could have been Onichu.
Don't give him ideas, please. He's not here right now, but don't give him ideas.
Tell him to rage to the extreme.
I will, Father. Just play Dad and Boy.
For next Halloween, I'm gonna dress up as Pikachu. Liz goes, no, you are not.
No. Actually, I gotta be honest. I would put him in that costume just to torture him.
What, more than you already do?
No comment.
Translation,
Look at it.
yes.
Could be worse. Could be me showing up to your doorstep as Majima Goro.
And then he would slam the door in your face.
Alright.
I'm at 0.
Me too.
Raiden? You at 0? You are? Okay. Kaiju at 0?
Yes,
In.
maybe.
Sounds like a lie.
I don't know.
Perhaps.
Could you repeat the question?
Potentially.
3, 2, 1, play. Live actors interacting with cartoon characters. Such a rare phenomenon.
Oh.
Seen the rare occurrences in cinematic history from Mary Poppins to Roger Rabbit and to Cool World. No one talks about that movie.
Please no. No.
Yeah, but yeah, I've seen half of that movie. Oh my god.
The whole thing.
Oh lord, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Refer to as its spiritual successor with Space Jam, starring NBA super legend Michael Jordan, headlining alongside an array of Looney Tunes legacy characters, including the debut appearance of Lola Bunny. But could lightning strike twice with Space Jam, as it did for Roger Rabbit? Time to find out as we hit the Space Jam. What affects an animation movie has a relatively simple plot. The Looney Tunes are challenged to a basketball game, they bit off more than they can chew, and they get Michael Jordan to help them win. Okay, seems simple enough. I like to think of the story having two challenges. One, the Toon Squad overcoming the threat of enslavement. Michael comes to terms with his career transition and a resolution that he shouldn't have left. It's something that you see throughout the movie where you see him strike out in his baseball appearance and you see him contemplating his choices and then to see him enjoying being back on the court in training and in the game. What else is amusing is seeing the players go through their trials and tribulations of what's wrong with them.
Besides basketball, where you find yourself.
Oh god.
Mhm.
Yeah. Poor Ewing.
Oh no, not this thing, no.
Please, I don't even
No.
for that one.
I'll never go out with Madonna again.
You went out with Madonna?
Oh god. No.
Speaking of female attraction,
Sure.
and some clever in-jokes.
You guys are nuts.
Correction. We're Looney Tunes, and as such are the exclusive property and trademark of Warner Brothers, Inc.
Oh god.
Yeah.
Nothing.
He's an ass kisser.
Ugh.
He is.
Hey, Bill Murray.
Yeah.
I didn't know Dan Aykroyd was in this picture.
How do you confuse Dan Aykroyd with Bill Murray? For starters, Aykroyd actually likes doing sequels.
Oh.
I love how like he just says, "I'm friends with the director."
Man and common sense. When you know that
Oh.
producers, you get it. Sorry, not sorry. Did a picture that wasn't Ghostbusters. His alumni cast had cameos. Like Evolution, Dan Aykroyd had a cameo as a senator.
I just forgot about that.
Chunk artists.
Sorry again. But enough of WWE's ratings.
Oh.
That's a burn.
Probably where most of the fun is to be had. From embarrassing Pound by stealing his short and to humorous moments which included a reference to Pulp Fiction and to a fart joke that was telegraphed way before it happened.
Oh god, no.
Like that ironic considering it's that character. I felt like the last
I think that's a joke.
baseball
Mhm.
out of retirement for the Chicago Bulls.
I'm sorry, MJ, but you are way too quiet in this video. Like, I know your situation with the apartment, but you can at least boost the recorded audio here.
Didn't sound that quiet.
That sounded a little low.
Like, I hear the sound effects, and they're, like, way loud. Like, everything else is louder than your voice here.
Alright, I'll see if I can tweak that a little later.
Newman.
I love Wayne Knight. I can't hold you. He's my favorite of the 90s.
He's also the best microchip we ever got from the Punisher movies.
Yeah.
True.
It's true.
I'm just gonna need the label. Especially Charles Barkley.
Bugs Bunny is a character that is synonymous with animation as much as Mickey Mouse or as Sonic the Hedgehog to video games. West captures Bugs' snark and wit perfectly, along with the essence of Elmer Fudd.
He was also in Futurama.
Is always the fall guy and the butt of the jokes. And this movie is no different, and Baker
I should say he's very underrated with Daffy.
channeling Daffy and with the zaniness of Taz. Virgin has a great talent of being able to differentiate his vocals from Porky, Tweety, and Marvin, respectively.
Gee, actual voice actors to play your animated characters. What a novel concept.
Right?
Yep.
Wait a minute, Bill Farmer? Goofy?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
You know this voice actor's work as Brain from Pinky and
Ah.
Yes.
from 1999 Sonic Underground, and more iconically as Dr. Egon Spengler from the real Ghostbusters. And
No, he's the brain, and always
Damn
will
right.
be the brain.
His brain.
George.
as Pepe Le Pew is not used as extensively as the rest of his castmates, but he captures Pepe.
Also, at least that character got to be in the movie.
And
Yeah.
Wells.
Provided over her career. Know her as Janine Melnitz from the real Ghostbusters, Phil and Lil from Rugrats, Linka from Captain Planet.
Oh, it's her.
My most favorite,
Mhm.
just like the others as well. Princess Sally Alicia Acorn from Sonic the Hedgehog, also known as Sat AM. In this, she's essentially using her Sally Acorn voice as Sonic had wrapped up production around this time. She has a sultry spin to it, which is very appealing to Bugs. DeVito appears as the only celebrity voice actor
And the internet.
disgruntled character would be
It's Trash Man.
disgruntled character with moxie and charisma.
I knew that voice was familiar.
Okay, for as much as I love the animation, the green screen work leaves a lot to be desired. When you look at the way Michael interacts with the background, it's very
Oh, I got a story for
Oh,
you
yeah,
when it
you're
comes
right.
to when it comes to the green screening of this movie.
Oh.
I gotta say, Looney Tunes Back in Action improved on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, kinda.
Well, it was mainly the characters interacting with realistic backgrounds.
Yeah.
Something that has thankfully improved over time to where you're not even able to make the distinction of whether it's a green screen or a live set. If you look at any MCU movie, Batman v Superman, and even Ghostbusters 3, have decent chroma key backgrounds. Plus, Ghostbusters 3 only had a budget of $75 million. And of course, I would be very remiss if I didn't highlight the great animator for effects animation. I think he acted
Oh.
Hell yeah.
on the bunny. So yeah, when I look back at this, effects are a bit of a mixed bag. And I'm being generous with that. James Newton Howard, whose credits range from Jungle Cruise, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, The Dark Knight, I Am Legend, Dinosaur, Liar Liar, Waterworld, Pretty Woman, and the original 1984 Dune, was the composer for this picture. He does a good job of keeping the momentum going between the Monstars versus the Toon Squad, and there are these softer, pleasant moments when Lola is first introduced, to when Lola is tending to a trample of bugs after he pushed her out of the way. This movie also boasted what is considered one of the best soundtracks.
That soundtrack is so fire, I swear to God.
Mhm.
I think I actually had that soundtrack growing up.
And
Same.
Bethany
I listened to it. A couple of friends used to have it back in the day.
A time when everyone used to love R. Kelly.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't mention him.
Them High for me is the best.
Mhm.
Also had Coolio or Aku.
Hmm.
Wow.
Damn.
Oh yeah, Skate Jam
Ah.
with Tony Hawk.
Oh, hey. Kill him with fire.
Oh,
Oh, you guys were dicks when you did that. Not cool, man.
that was some whole shit. I can't hold you.
Her name was
Oh.
Zendaya.
Damn right.
Ooh.
I'm kind of listening.
I'm MJ Knight, and this was The Space Jam.
I like that verdict. Dang, that was good.
You know, the funny thing is, like, ever since the new one came out, some people have made the claim that, oh, people don't like the new one because they're too nostalgic for the first one. But actually, like, I've noticed a lot of, like, younger YouTubers have, like, around the time that A New Legacy came out, a lot of younger YouTubers went back and watched the first one after watching the second one, and everyone unanimously preferred the first one.
Yeah,
Ah,
see?
So it's like,
Oh,
there's
that's
definitely not nostalgia bias talking here.
no.
I think, based on what little I've seen of New Legacy, because I never went to watch it in theaters, nor did I watch it on streaming, is animation-wise, it looked like it had improved, and particularly with regards to the chroma key, but from what I've heard, not just from you, but more or less everyone else, is that the first movie, the story's heart was much more in it, whereas the second one, you could tell it was nothing more than a nostalgic cash grab.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I say, I like Zendaya. I think she's a good actress. She's particularly good from what I've heard what she's done in Dune, what she does with Euphoria, and of course the Spider-Man movie franchise. But the very few times I heard her as Lola, I'm like, I can't separate the fact that that's Zendaya talking and not Lola, because at least with Kathy, she's able to distinguish most of her voice roles from each other. I mean, when you hear her as Janine, you don't hear Kathy, you hear Janine Melnitz. Phil and Lil, well, you hear Phil and Lil. The only one where one of her voice roles is similar is you hear Sally and then you hear Lola. It's basically Sally if she was a tiny bit sassier and a little bit more sultry, but that's basically the only differences. And she's considered like the female Frank Welker with regards to voiceovers, because she's done so many and done them so well. Whereas, like Kaiju highlighted, it's actually better when you actually get professional voice actors who know what they're doing and know to hit those particular spots, rather than just get a celebrity to come in. Now, we know why they go for the celebrity voice actors, because they're a big name. They'll bring in the butts in the seats, but it doesn't always pay off. I mean, with Sarah Michelle Gellar as April O'Neil, okay, you are hearing Buffy, but as April, it works. And to a subtle extent, Chris Evans being Captain America, alright, he's no Elias Koteas, but that's not, he's not trying to be. But as Casey, he works. And one of the very few times we've had one of the Turtles voiced by a celebrity actor, I mean, Johnny Knoxville, we never thought he would work as Leo, but he did. He actually came out decent.
I was surprised. Yeah, he was pretty good.
But, and, I don't know LeBron James as a person or a player. I mean, as a player, I've heard he's basically this generation's Michael Jordan in terms of his on-court work ethic, but I've spoken to a few people and said he's good, but he ain't no Jordan. Because from what I've seen from highlights, and particularly the video I shared privately early this morning, Jordan did things on the court that no one did before him and no one has ever done since. Because he was the one-man wrecking crew as far as basketball was concerned. I don't know why he never came back. Maybe he just didn't want to do it, or maybe that they just didn't have the right story. I don't know. And like Lid said, that was a dick move, saying, "Oh, here comes Michael Jordan," and it's Michael B. Jordan. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm happy to see him as well, but it's kind of a dick move. It's like when, alright, let's say, Kaiju's going to a convention and it has this one particular voice actor that he's really wanted to see, and out pops Matthew Broderick, and you're like, son of a bitch, he's done this to us again. Yeah. Is what it is. Raiden, what were your thoughts on the original Space Jam when you first saw it? How do you think it compares now? And minus the audio inconsistencies that I'll go fix after the stream, had thoughts on the review?
Look, I made no bones about it. I absolutely love this movie to this day. It's not perfect, but I absolutely love it. I remember watching this theater with my parents. It was a very fun experience. I think for me, and I guess this is bias going on, there's a lot of things that, you can't do to this day and all that, but for me, I was a big fan of Michael Jordan back in the day. I mean, kind of sort of my reason I watched the NBA at the time, thanks to my dad, and Looney Tunes I was already a fan of, so the fact that it was combined, I thought it would never happen, but it did, so it was just a no-brainer for me going to theater. Anytime I go back to it, I absolutely enjoy. With your review, I'm glad you touched on a lot of things, especially with the effects. Looking back and just MJ being part of that Looney Tunes world, it's not the best. Even with back in the day, you'll see it's a very At least with now, you see chroma casting a little bit more better. I gotta say, just the fact that you highlighted a lot of the voice actors that kind of made my day, because Kaiju's right. You see a lot of celebrities that just like take a lot of characters that we know and love, and it's just them, but not actually voicing the characters. So for me, it's tough. Like I said, biased, because I absolutely love the movie. It's my all-time favorite movie of all time. I think for me, it holds up. For the acting itself, especially for MJ, is a little monotone, but you can tell that he kind of had fun doing it. The other peeps, well, listen, they have to read the script. It's just that I think it's their personalities, but just like exaggerated. But for what it's worth, I still go back and rewatch it, and I don't know. For me, it brings back a fun nostalgic sense. I used to watch a lot of NBA back in the day, and the players back then were just, for me, were at their absolute A game.
Mm.
You know, it's just fun to go back to that era NBA where competition was just at an all-time high.
Oh yeah.
MJ to me was basically the Hulk Hogan or Stone Cold of his generation. So, but you had just like the Attitude Era, you still had those key players like Charles Barkley, like Sean Bradley, like Larry Johnson, like you know. But all in all, enjoy the movies this day. Review was great.
Appreciate that. Same questions to Madam President.
I mean, I love this movie. It was like it was my childhood favorite as a kid, to the point where, if anybody remembers those book drives as a kid, where it's like they would you would get the little flyer at school, and they would ask you if you want what kind of book you want, and I would ask for the freaking film. Yes.
Book orders.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember those.
Yeah, I asked for my mom to get me the Space Jam film adaptation. I'm not kidding, because I thought, hey, maybe it'll be like the movie. I was young and naive, but
we all were.
But again, yeah, but I did enjoy the movie for when I was a kid. I love this movie. As a kid, because again, my brother was into basketball, and Michael Jordan was his favorite player, and that was how me and my brother bond. We would watch basketball together, and hearing that he was in a movie, I'm like, yay! I was excited, and I still love this movie. It's kind of a guilty pleasure of mine, even though it's not all bad, but it's a little dated. I'm not gonna lie. And also, not since Jessica Rabbit have I been turned on by a cartoon character.
Oh my.
So wait, looking back at it, I'm like, am I a furry? What the hell does this mean? What are you doing to me, movie?
I mean, don't blame yourself. Blame the animators.
I will blame the anime.
Of course. Notice the way that even Michael was checking her out. I'm like, okay.
Like, dude, Matt, no!
Have a wife and kids. Stop it.
No. But I do love this movie, and the review was really good. Audio inconsistencies aside, but it's like you can fix that in post, so
Exactly.
it's not a big deal. But I did love the review. I did like your takes on it. I didn't even know about the stuff with the CGI and all that. It's like, makes sense, so
And to think,
it's a film for its time, so I will give it that. But all in all, I love the review, and I love this movie, so there you go.
hard to think we could have gotten The Rock if they ever did a third movie.
I wouldn't be against that.
Or Tony Hawk had Space
neither.
Jam in the thing.
Yes.
He was down to actually play, just that Warner Brothers just for whatever reason canceled the idea and never got back to him after he said yes.
Damn,
Aww.
that
It would've-
sucks.
Yeah, the thing is, it would have been popular as well because the Pro Skater games were a big thing at that time.
Oh, big
Oh
time.
yeah.
The whole extreme sports stuff. Yeah, every BMX biking and skating and rollerblading, all that good stuff. Scooters.
Not to mention,
Oh yeah.
Not to mention, if they did another game during that time, they could have had a Looney Tunes character as an unlockable special guest in one of the games.
Oh yeah, alongside Solid Snake and Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
Ring. Steven, same questions to you.
Unfortunately, I never originally saw Space Jam when it originally came out in the theater.
How dare you?
Well, technically I didn't really see any films in cinemas until I was about 6 or 7. Yes, I was that kind of sheltered when I was younger. But when I did eventually come around to see it, I like the movie. Plus, I love the joke. I think it's during midway through the film where Bugs and Daffy are just getting Jordan's gear, and there's like this exchange between Daffy and Bugs. Hey, how about this for a new team name? The Ducks! Oh, please. What kind of Mickey Mouse organization would ever name their team the Ducks?
That was funny. I can't hold you.
I'm not sure if that was an actual dig at the Mighty Ducks
Yes, it
movie.
was.
Oh.
That I knew it. I fucking knew it.
So that bit always made me laugh.
Then again, it's not the first time. Well, it wouldn't be the first time we'd see movies roasting each other. Because in X-Men Apocalypse, when they come out and say after like Return of the Jedi, they say, "Oh, the third movie's always the one where it basically goes to pop." They were referring to X-Men: The Last Stand at that point. But they were roasting themselves.
That movie had no excuse.
But they were roasting themselves, so it's like, okay.
Still.
Yeah, wasn't X-Men Last Stand directed by Brett Ratner?
Uh-huh.
Him.
Oh, I knew it. I knew it.
And he directed Rush Hour as well.
Oh, why you gotta do that?
That's what makes it hurt more. Rush Hour 2 is
Then he made a few disparaging comments about Ellen Page at the time. I'm like, dude, no. Not cool. You were saying, Steve?
Audio issues aside, of course.
Yeah, I can fix that.
That's pretty much it.
Last but never least, review extraordinaire himself, Mr. Noir. Your 2 cents.
Let's see. So yeah, I definitely grew up with the movie pretty much throughout my entire life. Remember like loving. It was one of the few movies I ended up like enjoying the soundtrack perhaps as equally as the movie itself.
Same.
Thankfully I grew up in an era. I grew up, when at the same time, Cartoon Network became a thing, so I had all the access to the Looney Tunes classics growing up. Didn't care at all about sports and basketball, but this movie miraculously made me like really into it. I definitely remember the commercials that eventually led to the inspiration behind this movie. So yeah, I remember like Looney Tunes kind of like reached an all-time peak during the mid to late 90s, and this movie definitely played a part of that pop culture zeitgeist. And it is silly, it is nonsensical. The premise alone is insane, and I honestly wouldn't have it any other way.
Same.
And it is funny how like older people born a good 10-20 years after before I was born, they all tend to like mock this movie and say it's bad and whatever. They're free to assess the movie however they'd like. But for me personally, it's like this movie is something that like has sort of acted in retrospect as a perfect encapsulation of 90s family entertainment.
Yeah.
That you can never get anywhere else. So it's always a very nostalgic look back at not just the movie itself, but to where pop culture was at that time. As for the review itself, great job. Like I said, you gotta increase the volume on your voice. If you can't speak louder into your microphone, then at the very least, increase the audio file itself after you've recorded it. Because yeah, I was struggling to listen to you, especially during the voiceover stuff or voiceover bits. One thing I do want to add, though, is in terms of the special effects, there's a funny story I heard involving the animation director who was frustrated with how the producers and directors were handling the movie, because the people in charge of this half animated, half live action movie had no knowledge of how animation is supposed to work. And there's not a better example than how they handled the green screen work with Michael Jordan. Now, if you look at this picture right here, what do you see?
Oh boy.
That looks weird.
What do you see?
I see Michael Jordan surrounded by green men.
Yes.
And
Now, Now the guys in all wearing the green suits. Each of them are supposed to be representing the Looney Tunes. And if you happen to know anything about the Looney Tunes, you know that they're all of various different shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
Mm.
One of them is supposed to be Tweety Bird.
Yeah, wait.
How?
What?
So at one point during the
What the
green
heck?
screen work, the animation director was there, and he was looking at this, and he was like, "This is gonna be a goddamn nightmare to animate," because there was one shot where the dude representing Tweety Bird walks in front of Michael Jordan, and he says, "How am I supposed to work with that? His whole body is covered. How do I turn that, green body covered Jordan into Tweety Bird?" And he's like, and the director or producers were like, "I don't know, that's your job."
Oh hell no! No.
So basically, it's like if you had to replace that dude with Tweety Bird, then that means like anytime that dude's green body is covering Michael Jordan, you would have to somehow do some magical Photoshop trickery to wipe out that green stuff and add back in Michael Jordan's body.
Yeah, Raiden. After this,
And
we're gonna go take the DeLorean and go slander people in '96.
And this goes for everybody, like
Yeah.
Sylvester,
Dear God.
Taz, Foghorn Leghorn, Daffy, Bugs, Lola, all of them, like their bodies do not match, these guys, and so many times you have green screen men constantly getting in front and or behind or next to Michael Jordan. So it's like, yeah, half the time you'd have to be like reanimating different portions of Jordan's body just to get him visible when interacting with these Looney Tune characters. So yeah, like for the people behind the scenes, it was an absolute nightmare and it was torturous for these poor animators.
I could understand it if you had.
Oh, I get that.
I could understand it if there was somebody that was supposed to be resembling Foghorn Leghorn, who is probably the only main Looney Tune that was probably close to Jordan in height. So that you could probably just about get away. But considering
fucking Tweety Bird,
Tweety's not even like a foot tall.
No.
I mean, even with Bugs, you'd be struggling. I mean, if they actually got green screen performers that were closely resembling the height of the Looney Tunes, then okay, you'd be able to find some creative ways of getting around it. But for Tweety, you might as well just have, Tweety as, an animation or CG effect, 'cause that's the only way that would work.
If
or
they
a
wanted to
golf ball on a
reference,
stick.
Yeah,
that's what I was gonna say.
that too.
But again, the people behind this movie had no knowledge of how an animated movie is supposed to work. This is why when it came to Roger Rabbit, they had what's his name? Richardson. Gotta find out that guy. He was the guy behind some of the greatest pieces of animation ever.
Yeah, because they literally took every cell of film from that movie to add the cartoon characters in. Sean just said it.
Take a look right now.
Sean's just said it perfectly. It's sad that the animators still have to put up with the idiots of today. Now, idiots is far too good for them.
Richard Williams.
Yeah.
Richard
Yes.
Williams was an Oscar-winning animator. He was the animation director on Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and this guy was like such a perfectionist that in most cases, most live action animation hybrid projects up to that point always had like still shots. The camera never moved when the animated characters and live action characters were on screen together. Like if you ever look at Mary Poppins, the camera always stands still, except when it came to Who Framed Roger Rabbit, the camera's like just shot like a normal movie would. And Richard Williams was the one who okayed that. He's like, no, if we're gonna make a movie, we're gonna shoot this like a movie, and we're gonna animate our characters to match the moving camera angles. And they're like, and the director was like, Robert Zemeckis was like, oh, well then, how come this nobody ever did this before? And Richard Williams said, because they're lazy.
Touche.
God bless that man.
Yes, indeed.
Unfortunately, his biggest passion project of all was a movie that took like 26 years to accomplish as a result of his crippling level of perfectionism. And unfortunately, when he had Warner Brothers become one of his financiers, they eventually were like, okay, this is taking way too long. We're losing a lot of money on this project. They took the movie away from him, and what did they turn it into? The Thief and the Cobbler.
The Thief and the Cobbler.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. I watched that movie before.
Yeah, they scrapped a lot of his animation work, did their own outsourced, cheaper animation, added a bunch of songs, added voices to the then silent characters, and it was a complete and total bomb. And if anyone is interested, I highly recommend. It's on YouTube right now. The Thief and the Cobbler recobbled cut, where someone went out of their way to get all that deleted footage, remove the songs, remove the voice acting from the main characters, and try to recreate a Richard Williams's original vision that potentially would have been a thing. That potentially the movie that could have been made.
It's a better movie, definitely.
So yeah, major props to not many people talk
just
about
a glad
animation
ripoff.
directors. Well, that's the funny thing. It's like he made this. He was working on this movie for 26 years, well before Aladdin, and a lot of those people who were working on Thief and the Cobbler ended up leaving his project to go work at Disney, where they then gave Disney the idea to then make Aladdin.
Yeah. Having said that, which version of Aladdin holds up more? The animated version or the live action remake?
90s.
I mean, do you have to ask?
If I don't ask it, no one else
mean,
will.
I mean, okay, I'll give the 2019 movie credit. At least it's actually one of the better live action Disney movies, not named Jungle Book. And I'll say this: the actor Mena Massoud that played Aladdin and Will Smith as the genie. I like their chemistry. It wasn't as good as the original, but still, it was something. Also, how you doing, Princess Jasmine, live action?
Naomi Scott, who you also know better
Naomi
as
Scott, yes.
Kimberly Hart. Still would have been interesting to see what they.
I'll admit with that movie.
Still would have been interesting to see what they could have done with a Power Rangers sequel, but as Kaiju pointed out, there was so many problems. The script probably being like the biggest problem, but in terms of art design and the way it was executed, it's like. I mean, you don't. Alright, for obvious reasons, you can't have it, be like a straight carbon copy of the original, because then there's no point in making the movie. But they could have done it in a way whereby there's not so many stylistic clashes with the way the characters were. I think the only ones that were probably the most consistent and probably similar but different enough from the original was probably Jason and Billy respectively, because with Billy, probably the most likable Billy's ever been, because no disrespect to David Yost, but he didn't really get personality till maybe like the second or third season of Power Rangers, whereas this one, he's got personality from the word go. even as a socially awkward outcast, he's got that charisma about him, even though he's not aware of it. And Dacre Montgomery as Jason is like, even though the character is a little bit of a jock, you still see that he's got some character and principles about him. It's like how he wouldn't rat his friends out. I'm like, okay, you got me liking you. You've actually got integrity. I like that. But yeah, they would have to have done so many improvements and changes if it had gone to a sequel, which, based on their box office takings, as Kaiju has said on occasion, is no good.
He's no good.
And when the last
That's just no good.
and
That's no good.
and when the last 20 minutes of the movie actually feels like a Power Rangers movie, it's like, okay, I get that you have to build these characters up, but you could have found, like as Kaiju had said in a previous end of year panel, you could have had you could have had like putty battles or slowly getting used to having these powers, but because $100 million in today's market is not a lot of money for a high visual effects movie, it's not going to get you very far. But then again,
unless you underpay and overwork your animators, like Marvel does.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of people leave the visual effects industry, because they see what Marvel are making people do, and they're like, fuck this, I'm out of here. It's probably why a lot of people are getting off of the MCU train, because I think the only one, and this is only based on what I've heard and my own personal experience, the only one that was consistent with this particular phase is No Way Home.
And the main reason why a lot of people liked it was most likely, all of the nostalgia baiting, getting to see Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and a lot of those people. Because I swear, if any of those characters were not there, if they didn't bring back those actors, I'm pretty sure you would have significantly less people interested in that movie.
Fair comment.
Yup.
And I agree with most of the consensus that I've seen. And I agree with the consensus in most YouTube comments. Andrew was probably one of the biggest highlights of the movie, and I was glad he got the redemption arc that his iteration of Spidey got.
That was my favorite scene.
It's just when he sees Michelle fall, he's like, "Oh no, we're not doing this again." And it's just like, nope.
No, as soon as I saw Peter get freaking hit by the glider, I'm like, oh no, don't you do this.
Not again.
Yeah. I like that little moment saying, like, Andrew's like, are you okay? Yeah. Are you okay? And he tears up, like, yeah.
I almost teared up at that moment, like, no, don't you do this to me.
Apparently, that line was improvised by Zendaya. That wasn't in the script.
Oh.
That makes it 10 times better then.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can sort of see it in his face, he was glad he got to correct his mistake, but it's just that little part of him's like, why couldn't I have done this for Gwen? But, in that one moment, he got his redemption. It's not... And people seem to think like, oh, he did something bad. It's like... He did and he didn't. He was going for the right reasons, but it's just that, his actions inadvertently killed Gwen, and it's, it's when you're trying to save someone and you end up, unexpectedly taking them out of the picture, what does that do to you? And, presumably for like X amount of years in the Amazing verse, he's had to live with that guilt, and to be, to be redeemed and allow himself to forgive himself. That's got to be like, whether it's fiction or non-fiction, that's got to be like the most rewarding thing, where you're like, okay, I can let go of this and finally move on. I just only hope, and I'm probably, holding my breath with this, I only hope that Sony will actually say, you know what? Let's give the fans the Amazing Spider-Man 3. Let's actually give him that full closure episode. Because we've seen with Andrew, he was never the problem. It was the material that he was fed that was the problem.
Yeah.
And writers trying to.
I mean, for me, with go ahead.
With writers trying to stuff too many ideas in one film.
Yeah. I think...
Damn. Yeah, the second one. Yeah.
I think realistically, and Kaiju may or may not agree with me, I think whether it's a superhero movie, action movie, or a movie of any genre, writing is probably the most consistent if it's just one or two writers, because then we don't have too many cooks in one kitchen. You know, you just have you have just two people feeding off each other ideas. Where when you see some other movies where they have like 5 to 6 writers, like, okay, that's too much. If you have, say, 5 to 6 writers that work on different episodes in a TV series, that's a different conversation, because sometimes it's nice and helpful to have fresh perspectives. But when it's all those many writers for one story in a movie or even one TV episode, that's too much. I mean, Batman Begins works so well because it was Christopher Nolan and David Goyer just doing the writing. Because, yeah, sometimes if you have one writer for a movie, it's their clear, specific vision, which is probably one of the reasons why Terminator 2 holds up so well, because that's all Cameron. But sometimes it helps if you have one extra fresh perspective. You can have people say, maybe leave some suggestions and hints, but not have them, integrally involved in the main writing of it. That's a different story. But like I say, Amazing 2 is an example of why that didn't work. Batman and Robin is another example of why that didn't work, despite what my brother says. Look, bro, love you. You and I agree on a lot of things. We do not agree on Batman and Robin. Sorry. Just put that out there. I mean, he told me to... And this is one thing I do agree with him on. It's like, if you look at Batman and Robin in the same tone as that of Batman and Batman Returns, yeah, as a movie, it fails. If you're looking at it from a comedic perspective, akin to the Adam West series, it works. If you're viewing it as a comedy, it works. But I prefer a comedic Batman to be comedic, and I prefer the Tim Burton styled series to be like Tim Burton. Just more Batman 89 and less Batman Returns. Like, as we've said on here so often, Returns goes to places, and not in a good way.
No, this is what happens when you give Tim Burton too much power. Also, funny enough, I've been watching his rendition of Wednesday Addams. So far, I'm enjoying it.
It's kind of spooky how much Jenny Ortega looks like Christina Ricci's version of Wednesday from when she was that young. I mean, okay, because that's the version that we associate so much with the character, but the way that she's had the hair and makeup down to like the finest details, like, okay, you're good. But we already know she's...
Also, can I just say...
Go on.
Can I just say Catherine Zeta-Jones is Morticia Addams, how you doing?
Catherine Zeta-Jones and whatever she's doing, how you doing? And Michael Douglas, you lucky son of a bitch. Didn't they...
For me, when it comes to the series of Wednesday Addams, is that I like how Jenna Ortega is so just humble doing all this. And anytime she speaks to Christina Ricci, she says, not one time she's mentioned Wednesday. She just wanted to, get the character right. And for what it's worth, I think she's doing a damn great job, especially with her sardonic monotone. Just the way she speaks is just Wednesday at her best.
Yeah. Raul Julia would have probably approved if he was still here today. I mean, for me, that's Gomez. End of discussion.
Oh yeah.
Who is it that played Morticia Adams in the original movies?
Angelica Houston.
Angelica Houston.
She was very good.
Oh yeah. From what I've heard, she put a lot of dedication in that role, especially like doing a corset thing. Like, ooh, yikes.
I know, it's reminding me of that line from Pirates of the Caribbean. It's like, do you think you know torture? Try wearing a corset. No thanks. Because when she's, showing that she's really, short on breath, like, that wasn't acting in that movie until Jack Sparrow just literally takes the knife and just cuts her out of it. And he's like, I didn't know you could do that. Clearly you've never been to Singapore, mate. And I'm like, okay, the less I know about that, the better. And of course, Johnny Depp's turned around to Disney saying, I'm not coming back to Pirates. Nope. I'm kind of disappointed by that, but he has his reasons for doing it, so I'm not going to fault him for that.
Yeah.
And they're speculating that Amber Heard could be going away for a while. If what is believed to be true, sorry, you had it coming. And I'm just gonna leave it. And I'm just gonna leave it at that, because when you've heard people, come out of the woodwork and say, "Oh no, she is exactly like this," it's like, well, that's it. Leave it at that. Probably got time for one more article, and this kind of has been saying what I've been kind of asking for some time.
Camera movie.
Oh no!
Camera.
Here's why there should be a Hulk horror movie.
Oh dear Lord, why? No.
Actually, you know what? Hold on. If this is if this is going to be the Immortal Hulk storyline, which is a sci-fi horror storyline,
I'll give you that. Yes.
then yes, do that. Do the Immortal Hulk, because from what I've seen of it, it looks amazing.
With roots in gothic and body horror. Here's why
I read that. Yeah, I read that via Yeah, I read it. I checked it out via the link horror, like Noir say when he does
Long Box of the Damned.
Like, whoa, this. Yeah, this shit crazy. I mean, that's how I discovered Junji Ito's Frankenstein.
Here's why the MCU should dive further into the genre for a future Hulk solo movie. The Hulk, created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, was originally a character made for Marvel in the early 60s. The Hulk was the gamma-empowered form of Bruce Banner, who exposed himself to gamma radiation while trying to save a young man from a gamma bomb test. Banner has since been defined by a creature that he transforms into whenever he is angry, going on rampage when that happens. The Hulk in the MCU is a bit of a far cry from his origin, as Banner now has far more control over his Hulk side. While earlier films depicted him as a hard-to-control force, he was still fundamentally part of the superhero team. It was only in his solo movies, which have since then been partially retconned, that he resembled the Hulk as he was first created, a fully uncontrollable monster, especially with the introduction of She-Hulk, who has much more control over her Hulk side than her cousin. It's possible we may never see the Hulk as that terrifying monster again. If the MCU intends to make a new solo Hulk movie, then they are spoiled for choice when it comes to good storylines, from Planet Hulk to his saga as Joe Fix-It. I really want to see a live-action version of Mr. Fix-It, because the way he was in the 90s animated series. Like, okay, you're an ass, but I like you. You know, you're fun. There's a lot you can do with the Hulk. However, this article will make the argument that a Hulk solo movie in the MCU should instead become more of a horror franchise. That kind of change would likely have to be a non-canon. But given the fact the MCU is focusing more on She-Hulk now and Banner is not in the right place for it, but the MCU has done similar non-canon or alternate universe spin-offs like What If series. Indeed, here's why horror is the right way to go. The Hulk has many of his roots and inspirations in Gothic horror. He's a living symbol of the dangers of nuclear weapons, given that he was the product of a radioactive bomb. In that way, he's a similar stand-in for the horrific results that can happen from scientific curiosity as Frankenstein. Both are symbols of what happens when humanity goes too far with science and plays God, and both end up hurting their creators. As Victor Frankenstein is harassed by his monster, Banner is cursed with his own monster. Stanley has commented on his own fondness for the monster in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, saying that he had a soft spot for the character. Lee also talks about another key influence on the Hulk, which is the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This influence added another dimension to the Hulk, who can now be understood in more of a psychological lens. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde tells of a Victorian man who has split himself into two personalities, one which can indulge in his hidden desires and one which remains clean of the guilt or shame of that indulgence. Similarly, the Hulk is a physical manifestation of Banner's negative emotions, which he keeps inside him. Jekyll and Hyde. Jekyll finds that he can't make a clean decision between his good and evil half. The consequences of his actions as Hyde come to haunt him regardless. Banner's life has been defined by the consequences of the Hulk's rampages, over which he has almost no control, especially in Ultimate Avengers. Good lord. Shut up, Watch. The Hulk and Banner split would also add to this dynamic by differentiating between the two sides as separate personalities, while for Dr. Jekyll, the alternate persona of Hyde is more of an anonymizing mask than a total separate personality. Despite all this, the Hulk was originally intended to be a hero or sympathetic figure in his own right. In the early Hulk comics, the Hulk does defeat supervillains or alien threats to the world. Lee compares him to the Thing, a character who looks monstrous but is actually very human. More modern writers have done well to keep in mind the Hulk's humanity, but have also accentuated him as a monster. There are several key Marvel comic storylines to understanding the modern Hulk. The first is Planet Hulk, in which the Hulk is embroiled in a sci-fi adventure on a far-off planet after the Illuminati send him to Sakaar in order to stop him from rampaging on Earth. That was done very well in Planet Hulk movie. The Illuminati wanted to send him to a peaceful planet, but he was accidentally sent to Sakaar, a world of violence and gladiatorial combat. The Hulk ends up ruling this planet, overthrowing the ruler. But an explosion from the ship that sent him there ends up destroying the entire world, just as he was beginning to find a home. Where the horror elements appear is in World War Hulk, where the Hulk returns to Earth in order to take revenge on the Illuminati and anyone who gets in the way, of which two of those members were Tony Stark and Professor X that were seen in the movie. The Hulk in this storyline is an unstoppable, almost kaiju-esque monster of destruction. So imagine a 300-foot tall version of the Hulk. Yeah, that's scary.
No.
The Hulk's who lays waste to some of the biggest powerhouses in Marvel like Sentry and Black Bolt. Here, the horror is very familiar to anyone who's seen a Godzilla movie, and it even has a similar reasoning for both their monstrous rampages, as both their homes were bombed. And then there's Al Ewing's run on the Hulk, which brings out the horror in the spades. From body horror to cosmic horror, the Immortal Hulk is a tour de force of how to make the Hulk genuinely scary. The Immortal Hulk is exactly what it says on the tin. The Hulk and Banner both find that they're immortal. The Hulk's personality has also changed to be more malevolent and intelligent, with the personality known as the Devil Hulk becoming more and more present, which they actually teased a little bit of that in the 2005 game Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction, in which Neil McDonough reprises his role as Banner. All the runs have made great use of the tension between Hulk and Banner, pitting them against each other. This was a bit of a fixture on Peter David's run, especially the Grey Hulk known as Joe Fixit. He was always known for looking for a way to repress and remove Banner so he could stay as the Grey Hulk longer. In any horror story with Banner, that sense of conflict between Banner and Hulk should remain, this conflict has been somewhat lost in the MCU, where Banner has mastered Hulk completely. I'd be completely for a more horror-esque version of the Hulk, mainly because you look at, his inception, and, the way, even when in some of the very early comics, it wouldn't be anger that would trigger the transformation. It would always be the sight of a full moon. And I kind of liken it to, if you could take the eerie, unsettling, and creepy atmosphere of the 2010 remake of The Wolfman, but apply that to the Hulk. And so you're out in a dark forest one night, and you don't hear a howl, but you hear the roar of the Hulk, maybe a few miles into the distance, and you have no idea what that is until you see like these piercing yellow eyes out of the darkness, and then you see the Hulk come through. Imagine like it's a misty night, and you could just see him just slowly stepping through. Imagine what that would do for the odds. It's like, oh boy, I need to go to the bathroom, and quick. Now, I'm not saying we now apply the method of thinking whereby if you get bitten by the Hulk, you turn into the Hulk after, 20 to 28 days. But having those kind of horror aesthetics into the story of the Hulk, one, it would allow people to actually view him more as a monster, because let's call it for what it is at the moment. The way the Hulk is in the MCU is a joke. Because,
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, from Banner's perspective, he just wanted control. Just to be able to stop, losing control and actually hurting people he cared about. But since Endgame, he's become a pushover. And it's where Jennifer says, oh, I've had it worse than you. It's like, right. So you've lost control, turned into a monster, caused hundreds of thousands and possibly millions of dollars in property damage, and possibly sent people to hospital. You get catcalled a couple of times, and you've had it worse than him. I don't think so. And that's not a knock on Tatiana Maslany, because at the end of the day, she's an actor for hire. She's just doing what, she's paid to do. But the way the writers have her say that, oh, she's had it worse than her cousin, when she's had full control over what happens to her, it's just like, shut up.
Speaking from a person who's a woman, I can kind of say that, like, it's more than just getting catcalled, getting demeaned and demoralized, getting treated like a second-class citizen. That's probably what they're interpreted as. But I can see your point, where it's like Bruce has had it a little bit worse, but that has nothing to do with your gender. I think it's because of the experiences they both had. They're both different. So, I'm really, no disrespect, I'm getting a little sick and tired of the whole, oh, it's because she's a woman, she has it worse than us. I'm getting sick and tired of both sides. So just stop.
You actually make a very good point there, Lids.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I'm sorry.
It's not to say she hasn't had it bad, but to say that she's had it worse than Bruce. It's like, your cousin essentially had a demon inside of him every time he lost control over his temper and possibly ended up killing people. It's like, yeah, okay. I mean, like I say, you make very valid points, so I acknowledge that, and but it's just to say that she has had it so worse than him. It's like, I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. Considering, dependent on which version of the Hulk that you followed, Bruce at times has, had this curse upon him because he was actually protecting someone, which I feel like the 2003, for all the warts that movie had, at least they actually, paid respect to the origin, because in the first comic, Bruce is protecting Rick from the bomb by getting blasted with him. Yeah, he could have gone into the ditch a little bit quicker, but is what it is. And he protected his science assistant, because that just shows the selflessness of the character. Whereas with the 2008 movie, they were just reenacting what they did with the TV series pilot, which I did appreciate that, because there are more or less like two different sets of Hulk fans. There's the ones that have grown up with the comics, and then there were those that saw the TV series first and never read the comics and tend to prefer the TV series because it took a slightly more realistic approach, where most of the Hulk's abilities are toned down. I mean, yeah, he only grows up to about 7 feet and 300 pounds of muscle, but he has accelerated healing, whereas in the comics, cartoons, and especially the movies, there seems to be no limit to what the Hulk can do. Again, depending on which version you're watching, and as we said, we don't talk about the ending of Death of the Incredible Hulk, especially with that wooden acting from Yasmin. I remember hearing Liz was like, "What? That's like, that's bad." Kaiju, if you've ever seen that movie, only ever watch it out of curiosity, because the Death of the Incredible Hulk, which was the last TV movie to feature Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno, and it was supposed to be, Banner getting some sort of cure, but in the end he ends up sacrificing himself to protect his new family and his new love interest. And the actress who plays Yasmin, her last line delivery is like, "David, don't die." And Raiden and Lydia, who saw that first, like, what the hell is this? When Bixby is rightfully one of the major highlights, but some of the supporting cast are not even given it, it's just like, ugh. But I understand, TV movie in the 90s, you were going to have some financial restrictions, but at the same time, you could have got something better than it. And here's the weirdest thing I don't get. That's not one of my better reviews from a writing or a production standpoint, and yet that review has garnered over 6,000 reviews, climbing up to 7,000 last time I checked. And it's not one of my better ones, but for whatever reason, people like that one review. I don't get it. We'll go around because we're kind of going over time, so that's my fault. Raiden, would you want to see more of a horror-styled MCU Hulk movie? And how would you like it to play out?
I mean, if anything, I would love to see that. Especially how much I enjoyed Werewolf by Night. I don't know what it is about that special, but I kind of want to see more horror themed Marvel projects. I mean, I kind of got it with the New Mutants, but that was a Fox thing. But I kind of want to see more of that. The Mortal Hulk, from what I've read, yeah, I kind of want to see. I don't want to see a beat by beat comic. I just want to see new ideas that the MCU always brings. That that the original material has kind of messed up. Because for me, I always go back to Captain America: Civil War, and I feel like they did things a little bit more better than the original Civil War, which was half and half. It was convoluted. A lot of the time, it was pretty good. So I just kind of want to see that, creativity sprinkled in. To see, okay, why is he doing this? Why is he going crazy? I just want to see some added things instead of just the original content. Because a lot of times, if you do something beat by beat and it doesn't hold up, you're gonna have a problem. So I kind of want to see that. Also, Hulk needed it because Homie's been abused too many times, and I just want to see again from Incredible Hulk because I enjoyed watching a little bit of the original Bill Bixby show and the animated version.
I think particularly with Bixby, and why myself and many others regard him as the quintessential Banner, is he carries the very sober awareness that he knows he has to keep himself to himself because he fears that one day possibly he could be pushed too far to where the creature actually kills someone, when from what we've seen is that the Hulk never wants to hurt anyone. There was that one time where he was doing some experimentation with some chemicals that actually somehow unlocked the dark side of his mind, which was an interesting way of seeing both David and the Hulk sort of acting out of character, and you could see the look on Bill's face. He was having the time of his life doing this, like, oh, I get to cut loose a little bit. But Banner was that sort of person, similar to Ed Norton's version. Even though he has a problem, he's being proactive. He's trying to find new ways of actually relieving himself of that problem, but at the same time he helps other people because that's just the benevolent heart and mind that the character had. And I like Ruffalo, but when someone says to me, oh, Ruffalo's the only true version of the Hulk, I'm like, Bill Bixby says hi. I'll just leave it at that. So Stephen, same questions to you. Do you want to see a more horror-styled Hulk movie, and how would you like it to play out?
Not sure about the horror aspect, but more of a serious tone, especially with a character like the Hulk.
Fair enough.
But more, my thinking, it's probably not gonna happen because recently, especially with the more later Marvel movies, I always see there's an emphasis on comedy. Whether it, and I thought for some reason I think it's stuck in Kevin Feige's head that comedy sells for whatever reason, which is a poor approach when it comes to superhero movies. I mean, even if they try to adapt stuff from the comics, they fail most of the time in terms of the actual portrayal.
Yeah.
Like, my thoughts originally go back to Thor: Love and Thunder with their portrayal of Gore the God Butcherer.
I never went to watch that movie, and I've heard nothing but bad stuff.
Yeah.
Same here.
For Gore in the comics is known to have killed multiple gods. They only show him killing one, and even when they do, it comes, and even with his whole story arc, it pales in comparison to his time in the comics. And if they try to do something similar in trying to make a more grounded Hulk story where he's again trying to handle his inner demons, they'd probably end up misfiring there. It's just something I've seen happen a lot with Marvel movies of late. Either that, or I'm starting to lose my interest in the MCU.
Well, you're not the first one. It's like I've said. Other than Spidey, no Iron Man, no Captain America. Not interested. Sorry.
Yeah, but for the most part, I don't see it happening anytime soon.
Fair enough. Madam President, same questions to you.
I mean, I understand a lot of both sides of the argument where it's like this could be interesting, but that you'd again, you'd have to find a director to pull that off because you need to find somebody who can balance horror properly. Oh, not just regular like gross out horror, like psychological horror. Because if we're looking at a character like the Hulk, it's not just physical; it's mental.
Yeah.
I I just also I'm hearing from like a news source that Chris Hemsworth is kind of done with the goofy Thor and wants to
Yeah.
get a bit more of a serious go serious with the character, which again I don't mind that because after everything he's experienced, I think we are done with Goofy Thor.
Yeah.
Here, but it's just me. I'm on both sides of the argument, so that's just me. And not and saying that Marvel can't pull off horror. Has anybody seen Werewolf by Night? Because that's a good example of doing a horror movie in the MCU properly. Don't get me wrong, there were some humorous moments, but with I think the good horror movies are the ones that can balance humor and horror because I found it like it's not a case study, but it's like I found like research where saying that like the reason we laugh when we see something horrible is that it's our body's way of comforting ourselves from something gruesome that we had just seen. We laugh at it to make ourselves feel better. So that's again that me putting too much psychology in that, but you need to find the right balance. Otherwise, you're just gonna have a goofy horror fest, and it's not gonna end well. So whether I want to see a Hulk horror movie, if it's done correctly, yes. If not, don't bother.
So, not exactly like Stephen Summers' Van Helsing, but something that similar way of thinking, where one of his assistants comes in after a werewolf's been. Is like, why does it smell like wet dog in here?
Oh God. I mean, you could try that, but it's like again, it's like you'd have to find the right balance. Otherwise, it's just going to be a complete mess.
That's fair. And to a man that knows a thing or two
Yes.
about monsters, Kaiju, what's your take?
Always.
Okay. I've always got to give a little bit more than that, but okay.
No, never.
Alrighty then.
But in any case, I do want to say that please go check out Comic Tropes' video on Immortal Hulk, just shared in the chat below on Discord. And all I can say is that, yeah, I definitely agree with what Lydia said, where it's like offering the idea of a psychological horror story. The Hulk has always been, that was always conceived as a more horror-inspired character, taking direct inspiration from both Frankenstein and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The Hulk is not really meant to be seen as a positive thing. It's supposed to be this horrific thing that has completely ruined Bruce Banner's life and has ruined not just his life, but the lives of everyone around him. And it's like a curse that he can never fully get rid of. At all. And there have been many stories out there where he tries to separate himself from the Hulk, but that only leads to things getting worse for him. And meanwhile, yeah, slowly he's like poisoning the people around his life in various different ways. So the fact that the current MCU Hulk has gone as far away from that as possible feels like a massive slap in the face for all of the best Hulk stories out there. And like, sure, you can have Banner come to terms with the Hulk and eventually leads into the whole Professor Hulk situation he's in now. However, we never get to see any of that development. All of that is completely off screen in the 5-year time skip from Avengers Endgame. So yeah, I do think that going a more horror route, going more into just how devastating the Hulk can be to Bruce and everyone around him, that should definitely be the go-to example or the go-to route for any future Hulk stories. And again, that's why I find the Immortal Hulk comics to be incredibly intriguing. Not to mention, it has one of the most like messed up ways for Hulk to transform into Bruce Banner and vice versa, where he doesn't just turn big and green, rather his body almost turns like inside out when they transform.
Yeesh.
Because I've seen in some screen caps when he's turning into the Hulk, he actually loses his teeth as well.
Yeah, he loses everything.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
It's like I say, you know, that's the real way to, you know, make the Hulk go from not just to credible but incredible again. You know, actually make it's like it's not appealing to go to have what Bruce has, because he sees it for what it is. He sees it as a curse. He just wants to live a normal life. And funnily enough, before the TV series got cancelled, the resolution was supposed to be Bruce, you know, David actually gets cured of his Hulk outs. There would actually be a conclusive resolution, but because I think the ratings were still very strong in season 4, but Universal were doing their thing at the time of pulling the rug out from underneath them, and it got cancelled, and people weren't happy about it. And maybe this is purely coincidence. I just find it a bit convenient that the Hulk is cancelled around April, springtime, and then Knight Rider shows up 4 months later. I'm like, probably pure coincidence. And yet my skeptical mind can't think, what if? What if it was? But then Knight Rider gets cancelled 4 years later because, well, Universal were asking NBC far too much money to do the show then. And if you know season 4 like I do, there were so many ideas being reused. And as for Voodoo Night, we don't talk about that episode. You think some of the ideas were jumping the shark in the MCU? Watch Voodoo Night and you'll be like, okay. Yeah. Think that'll do it for this week, because we're over time, but hey, it's us, so we kind of allow it. We're back again next Sunday, usual time of 6 p.m. UK, 1 p.m. Eastern, and 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And then, of course, I'm back again at midnight UK, 7 p.m. Eastern, and 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for both Dark Knight Tuesdays and Jurassic Wednesdays on Tuesday and Wednesday, respectively. Will we get through more of the insanity of Arkham City? Well, with the Joker in charge, we're going to be there a while. And as for Jurassic Wednesdays, will we finally ever make Jurassic Park San Diego a thing? Judging on past experiences, Lady Luck needs to be smiling at us for a change. And Steve,
And
Only
Ruby,
if
we're
you
not
release the
releasing the
dinosaurs.
dinosaurs.
Steve has seen me suffer.
Yes.
Pro tip, people, do not let your Tyrannosaurus from Isla Sorna die. You do, profits go nosediving like the XFL. Sorry, not
The
sorry.
Rexes must live. Let them live.
We're slowly learning, but it's like anything. It takes time. Okay, now who to go raid this evening? Shall we raid the Little Lemon Bun, or shall we raid K Thanks Sai? Actually, we're going to go raid K Thanks Sai because she's very sweet, and she does, you know, a lot of sort of fitness promotion on her channel, so yeah, we'll go raid her.
No, not Psyduck.
She probably does play Pokemon. She actually does play quite a few games on there. So, do give her a follow, and give her a subscription purely as a suggestion, but she's very sweet and very nice to talk to, and she's just in a similar vein to Ex-Nuclear Shark. She makes you see things from other perspectives. Leave it at that. So, until next time, I have been the Knight, saying good night from the night.
Alright. Also, please check out my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Kitsune Rokaku, where we will return to Pokemon, more specifically Oni's turn at the playthrough. He's taking the helm again. Again, we're doing a race thing, so it's like, it's his turn, we'll see what happens. But
How many glitches will they spot?
of them.
And
All of them.
is there a Masigno in the works?
Certainly hope not.
And
Kaiju?
Yeah, be sure to support my comics and novels, all available on Amazon and Kindle. And be sure to follow me over on Twitter at PW_DracoAzul, Instagram at Kaiju Noir, YouTube at Kaiju Noir, and Facebook at Primal Warrior Draco Azul.
Remember, read it, share it, review it.
Exactly. Because unlike some people here, Steve actually supports my